much, much less expensive than network television and more targetable. If you just want to reach black women between the ages of 18 and 65, you can. Or if you just want to reach veterans, or if you just want to reach, lawyers, you can reach anyone in a very pinpointed way. So it was reported in several papers, one of the Dallas papers, I think, and another, maybe a National Journal piece, that the Trump campaign, working with less money, ran a very sophisticated net-based campaign that was very effective. And as you point out, zeroing in on the key constituencies in Michigan and the Midwest. The last I had read, Brad was going to, who I don't know, I only know by reputation, which is good. It was going to be active in a pro-Trump agenda organization, probably a non-profit, to support the president's agenda, doing the same kind of grassroots organizing and mobilization.
Okay, and what's happened to Dave Mosley?
I have no idea. Go ahead. Just go ahead with the question and I'll repeat it.
I did have a hard time locating you on Twitter today. I don't know what that was all about. But there we go. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming here and thank you all for organizing this for us. I thank you for so much for referencing Ike. He had a PBS special on him right before the election called Ike Secret War. It's very great. It's all about parallels between he and Donald Trump. My question for you is about term limits. I realize that they're very important. Possibly, maybe there could be some type of executive order, and it ties into the other executive orders that have already been made. Do we get a chance to will they go to the floor? Will they get voted on so they can become law? Some of these executive orders that I think are so important. And about term limits, do we, the people, just by voting for or not voting for, congressmen and senators, is that going to take care of it? Will they be put? I mean, almost growing up, there was like a 2-term and a 4-term. And my last question for you is about Flynn and Vice President Pence, and the fact that the media reported that there was that Flynn knew of some traffickers that were friends of Pence, and that Pence said, no, I don't believe that. And we could just elaborate. Thank you.
All right, there's multiple questions here. Let me try them one by one. Executive orders are unilateral. They don't require the action of the Congress. The president is somewhat limited in the scope of them. You can't change the Constitution by executive order. The enshrined terms for congressmen and senators are in the Constitution, and therefore require a constitutional amendment to change them. We've amended our Constitution many times, and in my opinion, this would be a great amendment, because it ends the career politicians at the trough. It ensures fresh blood in the political process. It ends family dynasties where seats are handed down from generation to generation. And therefore, I think the president should champion a constitutional amendment for term limits. They are, by the way, extremely popular with the voters. I'm unfamiliar with the allegations regarding the vice president and Flynn. In all honesty, I'm on this book tour, which is a bit of a whirlwind, so therefore I don't get to sit at the computer and read as much as I would like. So I can't comment on that specifically. Thank you. Yes?
Hey, Roger, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
I hope that the secret warrant does not result in you being placed on double secret probation.
I suspect that's coming.
Are you the only prominent Republican who really knows how to spin?
How to?
Spin.
Well, if
while
you're,
also being sincere.
if you're saying how to best present your arguments to the media, no, I think we have some talented people in the party. I'd like to see them more in this White House, in all honesty. But I'm not going to go overboard on this. The president's entitled to pick his team. If you look at his record in business, when he's tried something that doesn't work, he changes it up and tries something else that does work. In this way, he's like Franklin Roosevelt. And when people turn in a mediocre performance, or they don't serve the overall enterprise or the leader, they can be replaced. You have to be, as Nixon said, a good butcher. So I think that he will achieve his goal. It may take him a while to figure out the Washington game. It's different than the New York game, but his skills and his instincts are what have got him here. He paid nothing for polling. There was no polling to tell him what to say and how to say it. That all came from his gut, from his brain, from his instinct. His opponents were spending tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars on sophisticated polling to find out what the voters wanted to hear so they could say it, or say what they wanted to say in the way that was most palatable to the voters. It's how the business works. But Donald Trump spoke from his instinct, and he seems to have hit the right chord. He got 4 million votes more than Ronald Reagan in the Republican primaries.
Thanks for being here.
Sure, thank you.
Mr. Stone,
Yes.
some of us that worked very hard on the campaign thought we were going to have a little break or a little honeymoon, and we are not. We turn the TVs on and we see these swarms of people protesting at town halls, and those of us with a discerning eye, we know it's fake, it's organized, they're told what to say.
Yes.
How can we, what can we do now as supporters to counteract this effort? Your thoughts, please.
I think it's very, very important that we mobilize once again the silent majority that elected Donald Trump. I was speaking to my friend Chris Ruddy at Newsmax, and he's working on perhaps a series of rallies across the country in which grassroots activists can show up and speak up for the president and his agenda. I agree with you. This is AstroTurf. It is largely being paid for by George Soros and other criminals. And while I don't doubt that there are some good, sincere people there who've gotten sucked in, or who may have succumbed to a biased mainstream media narrative and start to believe the crap that CNN spews, by and large, I think this is being run by agitators. They're the ones who shout the obscenities. They're the ones who throw the rocks and the bottles, as they did when I was trying to enter the deplorable. My granddaughter, who was my guest at the inaugural, caught a bottle in the ankle that somebody threw. 300, 400 protesters outside this event. They have every right to be there. They have every right to yell and ring their bells and blow their horns and shake their signs and say anything they want. They don't have a right to throw rocks and bottles and baggies of urine and baggies of Clorox in an attempt to blind somebody. And the Metropolitan Police, under the control of the Obama administration, stood by and watched.
That's right.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
How serious are the allegations that Obama is engaged in trying to establish a shadow government and progress his agenda?
Yes, we want
Is it
to
a
know.
real threat?
I think that it is, it's like many things, it's like many rumors. It has an important kernel of truth. With the vanquishing of Bill and Hillary, who he hated anyway, Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle, are now the head of the National Democratic Party. And his electoral coalition is still very much intact, and he remains popular among his voters. And therefore, if he wanted to dominate the Democratic Party, if he wanted to nominate Michelle Obama for president, he could probably do so. He also, by and large, controls the the Democratic National Committee, and therefore, once again, the nominating apparatus, which Hillary had to twist and cheat to beat Bernie Sanders, a guy who was not even a Democrat a year before he ran for president. So I don't know that they have a shadow government. I do think they have a political agenda. I think that they first need to dominate the Democratic Party. That consolidation is going on by and large as we speak. There's plenty of time for a shadow government, but they certainly aren't doing the president any favors.
This will be the last two questions, please, okay?
Mr. Stone, pleasure. Being a young conservative in New York, my friends and myself are often exposed to the violence and hate that millennials and just the left spews out towards us. And doing a lot of research, we see that George Soros is responsible for a lot of the funding behind these groups. Do you think, or do you have any sort of information that if the Trump administration will send the Justice Department to try and take down George Soros?
Well, the question seems to me would be, what crime has he committed? Now, assuming, and I think this is accurate, he has paid people to advocate the assassination of the president, that is most definitely a federal crime. Inciting violence, there are crimes there as well. So, in all honesty, I don't know why you could not have a legitimate prosecution. He is, of course, abroad, would probably avoid this country. We have extradition issues depending on where he was. But he is on record as saying that he hopes to foment a race war in this country, and that he can do so because the blacks are so easy to manipulate. I don't agree with that. And I think it is outrageous that he would admit that that is his plan, to turn us against each other. I am hopeful that the Attorney General will take a hard look at Mr. Soros and determine whether he has in fact committed various federal crimes. Last question, and then I'm going to move to my favorite part of the evening, selling books.
That's a tough question to follow. Just very quickly, you didn't mention anything about China and the South Sea Islands and the ramifications for our other Asian allies. If you have any comments on that with respect to what you think, how Trump might proceed?
It's interesting that we have this Russian hysteria when perhaps the greatest challenge to us across the board is from China. They're the ones stealing our technology. They're the ones pirating our patents. They are the ones who are most likely hacking us in a more sophisticated way. They are clearly belligerent. There's very real danger about the provocations against Japan, and that's a hot spot that could spark a world war. So I also think, however, that the president has, like Nixon, a unique opportunity to pursue peace. The Chinese have their own problems. They need our markets to sell their goods. We could work that out if it were reciprocal. They have, in recent weeks, there is some evidence that in between their news agencies trashing the president, there has been a couple olive branches. And I think the president's view is never be afraid to talk, except for with terrorists. This is a nation. We don't approve of their system, but I'm hopeful that in the vein of Nixon, who was the ultimate Cold Warrior, who made his reputation as a hard-line anti-communist, that Trump could negotiate a reasonable peace that protects our interests. We give up some things as they do, but we can coexist and then team up for the destruction of ISIS. Thank you very much. God bless you.